beautiful people. It's Ashley from the Awakened State, and today I'm honestly feeling pretty pinkified, or pinkalicious as my daughter would say. So today I want to talk a little bit about why do we feel the need to justify the struggle and the complications, and instead we don't listen to our alignment. We don't listen to ourselves. And instead we go radically against ourselves. And this is like a pattern I've been seeing happening with myself over the years. And it's like a really interesting teaching on how we justify the struggle to prove a point. And usually we're justifying the struggle and the hardship and the pain and the suffering because there's a part of us that is like almost in denial of listening to ourselves. And so over the years, I feel like this concept has really, it's been kind of with me for a while. It's been with me for like a long time. And I think it's interesting how when I wrote a blog post like a long time ago about how I felt I was in an illusion of control around my relationships. And what I noticed in particular is I would always make it about myself, and I would always make it about like either kind of trying to either project onto them or trying to get them to think the way I think, or trying to like kind of force a belief onto them. And this was a long time ago. And what I noticed, what I kept doing in those places is I kept relying on my own strength instead of the strength of the universe. Instead of releasing my energetic holdings on them and just letting them be in their own true spiritual light, I kept kind of forcing and pushing and controlling and kind of just like overly exerting my energy on this is how it should be, this is my expectation on them, this is how it is. And when I did that, what I noticed is there was always this moment, and I wrote about this a lot in my blogs, is there was this moment where it's just like, but this is just an illusion of control. This is just a moment of tuning back into my internal environment, my internal energy, and releasing all of that external influence that was going on. And when I did that, the struggle did dissipate. All of a sudden, it was because of my expectation, my holding, in the way that I was kind of projecting onto them. I wasn't allowing them to be in their full essence of who they are. So in doing that, I wasn't allowing me to be on the other side of my expectations. And instead what ended up happening is it was like this moment of realizing when I'm in an illusion of control, whether we're talking about a relationship, manifesting, any of that, what is actually going on is we're getting caught up in the struggle, and we're getting caught up in the hardship, and then we're making things overly complicated to prove a point to ourselves. Usually to validate our sense of worth, usually to validate our sense of being good enough. And in return, we're doing this from a place of where we're only relying on us. And when I say relying on us, we're relying on our ego. We're relying on our own personal identity. And instead, we're not willing to listen to our own alignment, to our own reflections, to the words and advice and conversations around us. And instead, we're kind of just being a bullhead about it and refusing to listen. So when we think about this in terms of why do we justify struggle and give it so much purpose? Well, when we do that, we're operating from a place of only thinking of ourselves. We're thinking of our ego, and we're not thinking of the projection around us. And so this is kind of one of those concepts that kind of just like really stood with me like for many years. And I think the illusion of control can be understandably really powerful because it shows us a lot between why we only rely on ourselves. And so let's break this down. When we say rely on ourselves, what are we actually saying? Like, what we're really saying is we're saying, I gotta put my hair up, I'm like super hot. What we're really saying is we're basically in this like space of, I'm going to make this about myself. I'm going to make this about my ego, my fears, my insecurities, my doubts, my controlling demeanor, my. And when we do that, what we're actually doing is we're cutting off so much magic, because we're either not allowing our manifestation to be what it is, we're not allowing the relationship to be what it is, we're not allowing it to grow and bloom, and instead we're trying to basically push and control, strive and try, and be in this energy where we're basically cutting ourselves off from our own growth. Because we're saying, and our ego's kind of dominating the script, and it's saying, well, actually, I don't really want to change. The people around me need to change. Actually, I don't want to grow. The people around me need to grow. Actually, I don't want to let go. So I'm going to try to force, strive, push, pull, do all of these things so I can rely on my inner strength. And when we do that on a consistent basis, we're overly complicating things for ourselves, because we're not fully allowing ourselves to be in our own alignment. And instead, we're trying to push the manifestation. We're trying to push the relationship. We're trying to add our expectations onto other things and objects and outcomes around us. And instead, we're not willing to be with what is and be in the growth and the evolution, and almost that moment of where we can allow ourselves to naturally bloom. You know, if you think about it in terms of a flower, like a flower doesn't force itself to bloom. It blooms naturally. It blooms from its essence. You know, it's the same concept of an acorn, you know? We don't know that it's going to turn into like a huge, ginormous tree, but we also know that eventually it's going to bust through. It's going to naturally evolve. It's going to naturally be in an evolution. If you think about a concept of a kid turning into a preteen, it's the same thing. This is not a foreign concept. This is really just a concept that we're not getting because we're allowing our ego to get in the way. So we don't allow ourselves to naturally shift and change. We try to force ourselves to change. We try to force ourselves to basically heal. And then we try to force ourselves to be in this energy of like a pushing energy. But what we're actually doing when we do that is we're making things overly complicated. We're making things overly hard. And when we do that, it's like we're trying to focus on pushing everything outside of us instead of changing what's inside of us. And so it's like we're trying to literally change all of the external things around us, but we're forgetting the most important piece. We're forgetting ourselves. We're forgetting us. We're forgetting to change us and step into our own growth and step into our own personal evolution of self. And instead we're like, nope, that needs change, that needs change, that needs change, that needs change, that needs change. But I don't need to change. I don't need to grow. I don't need to let go. Of course not. And then so we fall down the rabbit hole of striving and struggle and hardship. And when we do this on a consistent basis, we have justified giving pain a purpose so much that it's now our normal. And it's now easier. It's easier for the ego to see that relying on the external influence, relying on the external triggers, relying on the external projections is a stronger reality than the one we're cultivating inside of ourselves, than the one that we are listening to inside of ourselves. So naturally, what really happens is we stop listening. We stop listening to ourselves. We disconnect from ourselves. We disconnect from our soul. And naturally, we have lost our own alignment. We have lost the place inside of us that does already know. We have lost the place inside of us that already has the solution. We have lost the place inside of us that already knows the core truth of who we are. But instead, we rely on everything outside of us, and then we try to change everything outside of us, and then we forget our true power. We forget to activate our true power within us. And when we justify the struggle, it's almost as if we have overly complicated everything. Because when we allow the struggle to dominate our vibration, we're fundamentally saying we don't have it. We're fundamentally saying, I have to prove myself. I have to do more. I have to be more. I have to heal all of these things. I have to get rid of my karma. I have to do all of this. I have to strive and push and push and push and make it happen. I honestly hate that quote that you see like everywhere on like little like journals and office supplies. We say, make it happen. But it's not about making it happen. It's about really asking yourself those bold questions of what can I change inside of me to activate my alignment so I'm naturally in the flow and acceptance of myself, so I'm naturally pulled into the right actions, so I'm naturally led to the right actions, so I'm naturally in a flow and magnetism of attracting what I want naturally, because I'm listening to my alignment. I'm listening to who I am. I'm listening to the truth inside of me. And I'm not relying on the external things to guide me anymore. I'm not relying on pushing the external things around me. And I'm not relying on changing the external things around me, either the relationships or whatever. And instead, I'm tuning in, activating my power, listening to my alignment, and I'm letting myself be in the energy of believing beyond what I can see, because that is the space where magic happens. That is the space where we reclaim our power, because we have stopped relying on what is outside of us, and we have instead remembered the universe is always inside of us, and we hold the power to co-create our life. So my awakening tip for you today is to really feel into, where are you pushing against yourself? Where are you making things overly complicated where you're pushing the energy forward? I want you to think about, where do you feel you're getting caught in an illusion of control, and how you can start to step back into your body, into yourself, and tune back into releasing that, and releasing it from a space of tuning back into allowing yourself to let go, allowing yourself to step into change, allowing yourself to be in the acceptance. And then from that space, what is the aligned thing to do?